Everyone, it's convention season, and we're going to be doing one shots, or you might be doing one shots to get your friends into Savage Worlds. Well, at a con, I don't want people to just struggle the whole time. I want them to kind of understand the basics of the rule, the bare basics, and then we'll add in as we go along. So let's talk about those. And hey, you got a little bit of time at a convention. Let's spend about 5 or 7 minutes or so and call it good. It's a savage world. Strangers a weird war. It's a savage world. Hey everyone, it's Carl with Tabletop Tango. Look at the bubbles, do the stuff, and love your support. Let us buy more games and all that kind of good stuff. So let's talk about convention games or just one shots with your friends. Now, Eric is doing a detailed video, and I'll try to link to it at some point when it's available. And that's going to go into much deeper into rules, into character creation, and all that sort of stuff. What I'm going to talk about is you bring those pre-gens, everything, you hand them out to the players, they've got them, they can look at them, and then you're going to say, okay, what are the 3 important things that you need to know in order to play Savage Worlds? So let's check that out. Okay, welcome to the convention game. Who hasn't played Savage Worlds? Oh, you haven't? Great, let's explain it to you really quick. I'm going to cover the basic mechanics, I'm going to cover characters and some details about that, and then bennies and how you use them. I won't cover everything because we'll go through a bunch of stuff as we're playing the game, but this is just to give you that really fast, ready to go. So the first thing from a basic mechanics standpoint is the target number is normally 4. And then you'll have plus or minus modifiers to your roll based on that. So if you're shooting someone, for example, target number is 4, but if they're behind cover, it might be a -2. So what do you roll? Well, you'll look on your sheet and you'll see that you have skills. There might be fighting, shooting, notice. There's a bunch of skills. So next to that skill is going to be a die type. D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, depending on how skilled you are in that area. And so you'll roll your die for that skill. So let's say we're doing that shooting, we'll stick to that. And let's say you have a D8 in shooting. So you'll roll that die, and if you get an 8, you roll it again. That's called acing. So if we roll an 8 on our D8, we'll roll another D8 and we'll add it to it because we aced. We have exploding dice in Savage Worlds. So let's say for our attack, we need a 4, but let's say they're behind cover, so it's -2. So we're going to need a 6. So let's say we roll our D8 and we get a 4. Didn't make it. Let's say we rolled our D8 and we got an 8. Well, that is basically a success, but we get to roll it again. And so let's say we've got another 2. So now we have a 10. If you get 4 points above your target number, and remember, to hit, you need to hit that target number or above. So we needed a 4 or above. Well, now we are 4 points above our target number. So with our penalty of -2, and we had a 10, we now have an 8. So 8 compared to 4, we have what's called a raise now. And a raise can do all sorts of stuff. For combat, it can add more damage. For other things, it might define how successful you are. For powers, spells, it might define more damage or greater range, stuff like that. And we'll talk about that as we're playing the game. Another thing that we'll talk about now with characters. So your character is what we call a wild card. And that means you get bennies, which we'll talk about, and you get basically the ability to roll another die. So you'll roll a d6, which is called your wild die. Now you don't add that with your other roll. It's which one is the highest. So let's talk about our shooting again. We're going to shoot. We need a target number of 4. We have a -2 penalty, so we really need a 6. Let's say on our d8, we roll a 2. Well, we failed. But we also get to roll this d6, which is our wild die. And so we roll that, and let's say we got a 6. Success. But we get to roll it again, and we add that number in. So again, we might be able to get a 12 and then roll it again, and then we might get more. And so that greater number, remember, leads to a raise, or it might just be a lot of penalties that you have to overcome. So just think about somebody's under heavy cover at a long range. You're running at the time you're shooting. Penalties can add up. And so acing is a very important thing. So the last thing we need to talk about in our few minutes before we start a game is bennies. Bennies you can spend on a number of things. The big ones are what we call soaking. And soaking is where if you get damaged, and we'll talk about damage as we play the game, if you get damaged, you can spend a Benny, and then you can roll your vigor, and look at your sheet, you'll see vigor up there. And if you roll successfully, you will take away some of those wounds. Simple stuff. You also can re-roll trait rolls, skill rolls, and other rolls by spending a Benny. So let's say in our shooting, we really wanted to succeed and we only got that 3 and we needed a 4. We can spend a Benny and roll again. Now, if both your wild die and your other die are 1s, that's a critical failure, and we'll see what happens when that happens. So you can also spend Bennies on getting another initiative card. Initiative, we use a card deck, and as we go down, the values and the suits, that's when you get to go. Combat we'll dig into as we go, but we already talked a little bit about it with shooting. When we're in melee, I mentioned you have to go against a parry, and you can see on your sheet you have parry. So Bennies can also be spent on a narrative thing. So if you got a little thing you want to do and say, hey, Game Master, can I change something a little bit, or can I add a piece of information to the world? You might be able to spend a Benny and to do that. So there's a lot of stuff you can do, and we'll talk more about it. So basics, when you have a basic target number of 4, unless you have to go against parry and melee, you roll your die and a wild die, and if they explode, you add those values in, and you get to roll again. So again, D6, you get a 6, you get to roll again and add that value, etc. Now, wild die and your skill die, or whatever die your trait die, or whatever it is you're rolling, those two are independent and you take the higher. Simple stuff. Now, your character, you'll also see that there's things like edges and hindrances, and look at your sheet and we can talk about them, because edges might add a plus to your roll. They might allow you to re-roll. They might add other benefits. And so read those edges and talk to your Game Master and our con how to use them. So that's the basic, guys. Are you guys ready to play? And we'll dig into what the modifiers are and things you can do during combat as we're playing the game. But now you know the basics of Savage Worlds, and we're ready for our con game.
It's a savage world, strange as a weird war. It's a savage world, classics to explore. It's a savage world, in the land of the dead. It's a savage